on, right? The Civico Urban Responsibility
Yes.
logo. Perfect. Okay. So I'm Andrew Consigli. Thank you. Sorry about all that. So to talk about Civico a little bit, started Civico 5 years ago after being an architect and in the construction industry. Worked on a lot of sort of larger scale projects at previous jobs. One of my projects was, while I was an architect, was Mashpee Commons down the Cape. New Urbanist project. That's where I met, I don't know if Russ Preston's on the phone, but I met Russ and introduced me to CNU and the national organization. And through Imai Keller, the architect, and who also worked with DPZ on the master plan of Mashpee Commons, I sort of caught the New Urbanist bug and loved everything about their principles and everything that was going on. I was mainly in the construction industry and transferred to architecture and design, upon graduating from college. So after kind of working on Mashpee Commons and then ended up going to Elkis Manfredi and working on larger scale projects, I started Civico Development to work on sort of smaller scale, human scale development. And so our mission statement at Civico is to develop high quality buildings and neighborhoods that significantly enhance the social livability of our communities. We try to design projects that are contextual and human scale, and also embed innovative design principles and a civic spirit into all of our projects. So I would like to go through essentially how Civico started and how we formed a pipeline of projects, being a small development firm and wanting to, start developing, buildings that meant something and had purpose within our community. So one way of doing that, because I did not have any development experience, was to seek partners that needed value, help value of an architect, also, equity in a project, and other things that, help with permitting and design. And so what this led to was a series of innovative and creative partnerships, particularly around housing. And so we started, some smaller projects, townhome projects, and eventually started getting into more complex projects, and then eventually into more complex partnerships. And I sort of wanted to share sort of my journey in the past 5 years. We started in 2015, and we are now have a few projects under our belt, and we have a few construction projects going on right now, and a lot in permitting. And most of our projects are with partnerships, and those partnerships could be nonprofit groups, for-profit developers, and it could be municipalities and affordable housing trusts. But I sort of wanted to share the experience of the past 5 years with you all. So I'll start with the next slide. And you can hear me, right? I just want to make sure that I'm not speaking to, hello?
Right. We hear you good.
Okay. Great, thank you. So why partner? When we first started Civico, I had to understand what the risks were. I didn't want to take a project on all by myself with the amount of capital that I was working with. So I said, let's find partners out there that would split some equity, split the project responsibilities. So one of the things I wanted to talk about was risk mitigation. And so instead of going all in on one project, I thought, take what I had available in terms of my resources, whether that was actual money or whether it was actual time, and spread it across multiple projects. And so I had to go out and find good partners. And generally over the past 5 years, we have found really good partners, and we found, and there was definitely some learning experiences and some bumps along the road, but for the most part, and one reason I'm talking about it now is it was a positive experience. So time management is a huge piece of partnering. By being able to spread your time over multiple smaller projects, having a partner allowed me to do that. Capital raising is another big piece of this. Is, for the project sizes we were looking at, they could have been anywhere from $1 million equity raise to a $5 million equity raise, meaning they were anywhere from, $3 million project cost to $20 million project cost. And so to be able to rely on, someone else and not just our capital sources was really big in being able to secure certain projects. And then also building a pipeline. I came out of Elkis Manfredi, earning a certain salary, and I just couldn't stop that income because I had a family. And so we needed to find multiple projects to work on, and whether that was for sale product or developer fee type of projects, we had to build a pipeline to be able to carry our overhead, whether it was me and other partners that I was working with and employees that I was trying to build a business with. So deal sourcing is another reason why partnering was good for us at a small scale type of development firm. So what defines a good partnership? To have both parties understand an understanding of the workload that they're both taking on. Having complementary skill sets is really important. You can't both be, you both can be architects and you both can be, financial gurus, but it's always best to have a complementary skill sets and values to be able to add as much as you can to that project. So shared investment, skin in the game, with that term that everyone uses, is really important because it holds accountability. And, when things aren't so good, which happens a lot on development projects, you want to know that your partner is invested in the same amount of, in the same amount of investment as you are. And you also want to have aligning goals and vision. You want to be partnered with someone that believes in the same principles you do, and also have clear expectations. And clear expectations could mean, what has been really important for us in starting partnerships is having a good operating agreement, whether it's, through a lawyer or even written out on a piece of paper. It should be through a lawyer eventually when you actually put funds in and commit to projects, but clear expectations on who's doing what, how much each are putting in, and where does each partner want to go with this project. So that's kind of what defines a good partnership in our mind. Risk partnering, there's always risks, and as I mentioned, we did have some bumps in the road, and it's not that they were bad partners or good partners. It just sometimes the stars didn't align. So one of the major risks to partnering, why people don't partner all the time, is dilution of development fee and profit. Why have somebody else come in if you can do it all on your own and collect the maximum amount of development fee and in sales and profits in rental income? That we took a different stance on this, and we said, we're going to spread, we're going to take a lower fee and lower profit and split it with someone and get to have a more diversity in our portfolio of projects, get more experience, because that's what we were looking for. We were looking for experience because, as an architect and a contractor, I didn't have the development experience, and to be able to sort of glean off of other development specialists, I was able to get a good lesson in development 101 right from the start. So that's the reason why we ended up partnering on a lot of our projects. Another risk of partnering would be, having multiple points of contact could get confusing. Could get confusing to the towns that you're working with, whether you're permitting projects. Could get very confusing with the consultants that you're working with, and it could get confusing with the contractor. So having a clear idea of who is the person in charge, or who are the multiple people in charge, and making sure that you are on the same page with that person, I think is very important for the success of the project. No one needs more stress than what is already coming through on an existing construction project or development project. So adding more stress through conflict of the partners is always something to really, to watch out for. If there's conflict, it just doesn't help things, obviously. So, and then, spreading yourself too thin and not enough specialization. One of the reasons why we stuck with just housing is we didn't want to spread across, too much commercial or too much office space, or, we wanted to focus really on housing, knowing that we were going to be spread across a number of projects. So, I think we've sort of found our niche in housing and creating sort of, unique housing typologies. So I want to bring sort of 5 case studies to the table. Each are in different stages of development. Right now, we are generally outside of Boston in the suburbs of Greater Boston, and then also in Worcester as well. We see a lot of potential in Worcester, and it's sort of our sandbox, if you will, to sort of play in. And it's been a great sort of 5 years in the city of Worcester. So there's two projects in the city of Worcester that I want to point out that are both in permitting. And we have a project in Reading that we're working on. Also Lincoln that we're finishing up just now. And Abbey Road was the first project, significant project that we got into. And each one of these has an element of partnering that I wanted to point out and go through. So first project, it is the Lagrange Mill, which we have under agreement. It is being permitted under the commercial overlay zone in the Main South District of Worcester. It's a series of mill buildings, 4 mill buildings, and there's a public street going down the center. I'll show you a plan in a minute. And we're generally going to put 75 units of residential into these 4 mill buildings within about 85,000 square feet of area. This will be a LIHTC project, low income housing tax credit project, and also historic tax credit project. What is really unique about this project is generally the partnering. I'll go to the slide that you can see the complex of buildings here. So there's a complex of 4 main buildings, and there's a public street that goes down the center. And we're generally looking to make the public street into a private street to be able to close it, because we feel that all the parking lots and fire access can be accessed through the edges of the site, where the street now can be used more for placemaking and a better use than just a thoroughfare for cars. As I mentioned, the partnering is really interesting on this. One of the pieces that we didn't really have a handle on was the LIHTC funding and also the historic tax credits. We do have some smaller projects that we're working on solely by ourselves, Civico, that are historic tax credit projects, but this was going to be a biggie, meaning it was going to be, $23 million in construction costs, spread across 4 buildings in a tight timeline. So one of our partners, the partner that Civico is working with, his name is John Rosinski from Reese Larkin Development. He used to be a vice president at Wind Development and went out on his own. And we know him from some past projects that I worked with him on, and he wanted to partner with us on this project. And what has been great is that he has handled, the essentially historic tax credits and the LIHTC funding and the timeline and the process to get all that done, while we, Civico, are sort of the local presence in Worcester, handling the permitting, the zoning, the entitlement, and then eventually also the design. On most projects that I'm going to go through, because of my architectural background, most projects are designed, upfront by us. Eventually, we do get an architect of record to work on all the drawings. But generally, the conceptual, through permitting is Civico is doing most of the design work and conceptual planning and urban design. So the partnership has worked out great so far. We are not in too deep yet. We also have another partner, which is the community garden. There is a group that has been using the site now for some time that we are going to integrate, nonprofit that we're going to integrate into the site. You can see on the lower right-hand corner, they have a community garden and a garden building that we're going to integrate into our project. So this is right adjacent to the Junction Shop Lofts, which is another LIHTC project, mill redevelopment, but also next to the new ballpark, the Polar Park that is currently under construction. So this area of Maine South is being revitalized, and we believe, and it is a major anchor project to this district. And we are already feeling, a different sense of ownership of this area, and I think it's going to only be growing over the next few years, and this project's going to be a major contributor to that. So we're pretty excited about this project and getting this going, which we have started about a month or two ago. The next project that I want to talk about was in Worcester as well, the Tiny Village, we call it. I don't know if that's going to be ended up being the name of the project, but this is a partnership between the Worcester Eastside CDC, Community Development Corporation, and Civico, where we are coming in and designing and entitling the project, where the Worcester Eastside CDC, it's a mouthful, is going to be handling and helping us with the funding of the project and securing funding through the Department of Mental Health. Essentially, this is going to be 16 to 20 tiny homes that are around 550 square feet each, and they're going to be permanent housing for the homeless. Now, this project is going to be permitted through the cluster zoning ordinance, which obviously encourages greater density in exchange for preservation of open space. We are also working with the WRA, Worcester Reserve Transit Authority, to add a bus stop to make this a transit-oriented development. The picture that you see there with the little yellow cottage is not one of our designs or projects. It is sort of inspiration that we're using to start the process. We're happy to kind of announce that Union Studio, who from Providence, that many in the CNU world know, is going to be the architect for this project, and we're ready to get started. Another interesting partner on this project is UMass Memorial, which is a local hospital, one of the largest employers in Massachusetts, but very important to Worcester. And so they're using their Anchor Mission Fund, which goes into community projects, to provide the pre-development funding for the project. So, between the Worcester Eastside CDC, Civico, and UMass, and Union Studio, we feel this is a really special project for the community in Worcester, and one of 3 projects that the city of Worcester has, is using to target the chronically homeless, to provide housing for the chronically homeless. And then this is the site plan. This is going to be redone by Union Studios. This is just our quick kind of cluster development, finding out how many homes we possibly could get. But generally, we're looking at a pocket neighborhood style development where all the homes are facing a common green, and as I mentioned, each home will be around 600 square feet, and it's sort of nestled in an area of open space that it was previously developed for a church, and the church never came to fruition. They poured the foundation, but never finished the church. So it's been on the market now probably for 10 years, and we're taking it over, and hopefully going to make this project a real success. So next project, this is another interesting project for us. So this is a for-profit development that is partnered with another for-profit developer, Tregorth Companies. So Dave Tregorth and Dan Hubbard, who lead Treworth Companies. They are specialized in affordable housing and historic tax credits, and they are also a for-profit developer, but mainly focused on housing. And Dave and I met probably 4 years ago and started working on some projects together. And this is one that came to fruition. And so we partnered on this project. Treworth Companies came in and led the entitlement process and also securing funding from the DHCD for the affordable housing component of the project. This project is in the 40R district of Reading, in downtown Reading. So it is a smart growth project next to the train station, right in downtown Reading. Downtown Reading is seeing a lot of development in their downtown, and we're loving it. It's a lot of residential units, and it's going to get a lot of people on the street using the train. And I applaud Reading, for the town of Reading, for development and establishing the 40R district. This will be ground floor retail with 55 apartment units of 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms. We did get $1.4 million from the DHCD in the first round of applications. I think it was a very well-received project. The project was called Ace on Blue, but we're calling it now Ace Flats. The project was if everyone knows what, in an old scrapbook, the old picture corners that, held the pictures in place, this was the site that, those were made and invented on. And so they shipped them worldwide and were internationally known, and they went out of business, and this was an old warehouse on the site. So the site was historic. The building was not so much historic, but the site was. So we are adding also a community room that honors the history of the project, or of the previous historic nature of the building, or the site at least. So this is, as I mentioned, this was a 40R. It will be LEED certified, LEED for homes. Most of the projects that Civico does do try to achieve LEED for homes. As I mentioned, partnership-wise, this has worked out really well, where Treworth has handled the entitlement and we have handled the design. And when you do get construction, I feel it's very important for both parties to share in the responsibilities of the construction. This project is currently under construction. Let me go back, sorry. This is the project here, the front view with the retail, and then 3 stories of residential units above. There is a lot of responsibility when it comes to construction, a lot of things one developer, it's really hard to handle on his own. So to be able to partner and split those responsibilities has been very beneficial, because as we all know, for the developers out there, or even the architects and the contractors and everyone that knows construction, there are so many questions that need to be asked to make sure you avoid any pitfalls and mistakes. And not everything can be picked up on the drawings. So to be able to have multiple people that are invested in the project looking over construction is probably one of the most important pieces of partnering that I can't stress more. This is just a quick plan of the project. You see Gould Street on top, and then the retail that hides the parking behind. It will all be podium parking. And this is the construction as of the other day. The building has 2 phases to it. We're building the first phase and then the second phase right directly after. And it will be a concrete podium, steel podium with a wood frame panel system above. The next project is a really interesting project as well. And one of my partners on that project is on the call now. John Pugh is one of my partners on this project. And David Oliveri as well. Oreo Landing is a project in Lincoln, Massachusetts, on the north side of town. And this is interesting because it was in partnership with the Lincoln Affordable Housing Trust, where the town so the town of Lincoln, I'm going to applaud the town of Lincoln again for their efforts in affordable housing all the way back, I think, in the 60s and 70s. They've been very proactive in affordable housing, even before the requirement was set forth by the Commonwealth. And so they were above their 10%, but were going to fall below their 10% on the SHI come the 2020 census. And so they were afraid this piece of land that was for sale on the market was going to go to a 40B developer, which would come in. It was a 6-acre site, and they were afraid a 40B developer was going to come along and develop at the maximum density that they could, and override all the zoning rules, and they wouldn't have any control over the design of the building. So we came in and wanted to purchase it, but knowing that the price for the land that the owner wanted to sell to 40B developers was much higher than what a smaller development could afford, we proposed to partner with them with their affordable housing trust, and they graciously loaned $1 million towards making the project 25% affordable. So all 60 units, so it's a 60-unit development of rental housing, could be counted against their SHI, their 10% requirement. And what this did is this puts them out for the next 30 years, but they're going to continue to develop. They're going to continue to develop affordable housing in addition to this. This is not the only project that they're working on, but this does get them over the 10%. So this is a $20 million project, LEED certified, LEED for Home certified. There is a historic house component to this that we did. We moved the historic house from the front of the site to the center of these buildings here. This is an interesting project where the center of the courtyard is going to be vegetable gardens that the rental homeowners can rent as an amenity to use for vegetable garden. And we're going to have a vegetable garden expert. Gardens by Renee is the name. She's going to be kind of the on-site garden expert that is going to be helping with all the gardening for the residences. This is a big south-facing courtyard where the cars drive around back and tuck underneath. Most projects that we do, we usually get the car to go around back and be subservient to the pedestrian and not be facing parking. So most of these units face over the south-facing courtyard. This was sort of the rendering that we did initially, very modern farmhouse look, kind of fitting in within the vernacular of Lincoln. And as I mentioned, this was 60 units, and this is under construction right now. We are pretty much leasing and getting our certificate occupancies right now. So the building is opening. This is a little bit from a few weeks ago, but you can see the quality of the building, because the town was able to drive the design of the building and the quality of the building. So, I feel that was a great partnership with the town, but also wouldn't be possible unless we had the help of the Affordable Housing Trust. And then you can just see some details that we, with some of the modern farmhouse look. Last project I'm going to bring up was the first project that we did. This is Abbey Road. And this was another project where it was a for-profit. It was a partnership between two for-profit developers. So this project previously was permitted as a sort of cul-de-sac development. This is in the town of Sherborne, right in the center, the town village of Sherborne, and it was situated around two historic homes. And the site was of the old Peace Abbey, if anyone knows what that is. It was old pacifist retreat center that people would come to when they were at different universities, and they would come here and almost, they would stay overnight, almost like in a hotel type environment. And so we wanted to save the buildings, and so we built townhomes, for sale townhomes, 55 and above, active adult living, around a courtyard. And so it was approved through the town meeting, and we swapped land with the town to get enough land to be able to build the 18 townhomes. It is LEED certified, and we preserved two historic buildings that I'll get into a little bit more. So this is the courtyard of the finished product. We finished this in 2018. We worked with the town of Sherborne and the Sherborne Housing Partnership to develop the project and the look and feel of the project, because it had to get approved through town meeting vote. And all the cars go around back and tuck underneath for parking. We try to bring all the parking behind the building, as I mentioned, and there are residential elevators within each unit. Because these are for folks that are 55 and older, living on all 3 floors of their home would be really hard with stairs, and it would be hard to age in place. So we added elevators to each unit, which has been a real hit, and something that we're incorporating in future projects, because we feel that to be able to age in place and buy a home for the long term is huge. The building that you see on the left-hand side of the image was a historic house that was failing structurally, and we actually tore it down and rebuilt a replica, and worked with the town's historic board to make sure it was built to the exact specifications of the previous home that was there. And then, so this is the site plan of the project. You can see the red buildings were the old historic buildings, and we brought the new townhomes around a courtyard in the center that you saw, with sort of public amenity space. And you can see that the road went around back and tucked underneath for parking for each unit. This was an old memorial that was for the Peace Abbey that we kept for the development as sort of a passive park, if you will. And then some other pictures that we have are of the historic library that we redid over. This was the replica of the historic house that we did, and then just some details. And just to kind of just step back a little bit about the partnership of this, there was a previous buyer who purchased this. So I partnered with a fellow named Bob Murchison from Phoenix Partners, who is a Sherborne resident. And he entitled this project as sort of like a cul-de-sac type of development where the road went into the center space. These buildings were set back a little bit more, and the road actually came in, and he had all front-facing garages. Being the first project, I wanted to get into development, so I approached him and said, "Listen, I think I got a better idea here." And so we looked at it differently, and we brought it to the town, and we re-permitted the entire project by tweaking the site plan, so we had a center courtyard instead of a big parking cul-de-sac type of development. And the town loved it. And we got a really good response from the market and the community, because it was sold out pretty much upon completion. And I think we have pretty happy community right now, and a lot more green space than we had. Yep.
Sorry to interrupt. I want to just get some questions. You want to wrap up?
Yep. I'm pretty much done right now. So what we've learned from this process essentially is the Civico principles on partnering. As a small firm, but growing firm, we believe partnering is very beneficial, but you need to find the right partners to do repeat business with. And that is crucial in implementing long-term success of what we're trying to do at Civico. We're also striving to build a culture of collaboration, and that welcomes the diversity of opinions and skills. So being open to, the best idea wins, really. We'd love to hear from a lot of different people, and it's almost check your ego at the door. And then we also understand that not every project is a fit for partnering. We essentially have multiple projects that are just Civico, and multiple projects that are with partners and multiple types of partners. So we strive on building teams around projects, not projects around teams. And so that is the end of our presentation. I'd love to take questions, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, Andrew. That was a great presentation. I think we had a question from Kwame Campbell. His question is he'd like to hear a bit more about how it's interesting, all the different partnerships. How do you vet partners in terms of figuring out who are the right groups of people or individuals to work with on projects, and how do you kind of figure out whether they're, I guess trustworthy is the right word. But.
Yep, very great question. And I think early on in the development, early on as we started in 2015, you probably had less of your pick of partners, as opposed to, now we probably have more pick of our partners, just because we're in the network and on the street essentially a lot more than we were. But our first partner essentially, we had an existing relationship with. it was actually through David Tregorth that I met Bob Murchison. And, he was previously permitting in the town for this project. And, I looked online and did my due diligence of how he worked with the town, his experience with the town, his demeanor. I just right off the bat, we struck a good tone with each other. So I knew right off the bat we had the same vision, right, for the site. And I came in and had a different idea for the project. This is Abbey Road that I'm talking about. And he didn't at once, he loved the idea and said, and had no ego. And I kind of took a chance, knowing that I had to kind of jump in feet first. But another thing that is very beneficial is also being involved in industry like CNU. For example, I met John Pugh through CNU New England. And, when I was starting Civico, I reached out to everyone that I could, network with everyone that I could. And John is one person that I met. And we started having coffee and started meeting. And then eventually we started working on projects together. And, 5 years later, we're finishing our first project, significant project, that is 60 units and, in the town of Lincoln. So, and, I've really enjoyed working with John. And I don't think that, knowing that he was part of CNU and the principles that CNU believes in, he's not going to be involved in CNU if he doesn't believe in it, right? He puts a lot of time into it. So I knew, he probably had the same type of vision and principles that I do. And then once we got connected and started working with each other, one thing, we started working and realized that it does work. So,
yeah, that's interesting, Andrew.
You just have to have the same ideals.
I was gonna say, I think it's an interesting point. You and I had a conversation yesterday, and I guess I'll share there was a question about the budget and design, and when it comes down to it, we have a mutual respect for each other's experience and point of view, and I think it's just super helpful to recognize that the other person's value and experience is meaningful.
And so someone like John, for example, not to belabor this, but John, you are an architect, and I'm an architect too. And you would think that, two architects on one project really wouldn't work. But what John had the skill set that I didn't have is the financial background. He has a degree in finance. And he was able to run the performance, do all the financial analysis, monitor the budget with the contractor. I mean, every piece of the financial, piece of the project is done by John. And so, but he also had the sense that if we wanted to add something for design and the quality of the design, he was able to do that. So I think you got to have a complementary skill sets, but also understand what each other's skill sets are.
There's a question from one of our audience members. Do you foresee any long-term changes in housing development in terms of a shift in housing development, housing use due to COVID-19? Do you see the more people in different places or spreading out? I guess that's really the question, right? How do you see that affecting things?
Yeah, short term. I mean, this is just my opinion. Everyone has an opinion, but I do think short term, people probably will be leaving the city a little bit more and getting more into the suburbs. And we have a building in Lincoln, right? It has vegetable gardens and a lot more space than a building in Cambridge does or a building in Boston does. Right now we're seeing that in our leasing. We're seeing people kind of shift out into the city more. Out of the city more. Once I think there is a sort of a cure or a vaccine,
yep.
that we'll probably see people flock back to the city, because I don't think the suburbs right now are built up enough or exciting enough. I live in the suburbs, so I don't mean to knock on the suburbs, but the city is where the action is, and there's restaurants and there's so many amenities, and people love to socialize. We're human beings, and I don't think that the suburbs are they're not in front of essentially cities right now. However, what we're trying to do at Civico, and I'm sure other firms are doing it as well, is we are trying to develop in the suburbs around train stations, TODs, and create real places and they're theirs, right, around, you know, suburban town centers. And so we feel that, I think that's only going to grow, is developing around town centers and train stations in suburbia. So I think as, you know, the old guard in sort of the town zoning and everything sort of kind of overturns, and we start getting really fresh ideas, and I'm already seeing it, is I'm seeing a lot of towns being very proactive on changing their zoning to allow mixed use development, denser development. And I just hope that more developers are going to be doing great projects that add an element of placemaking and you know, that sort of thing to these places, as opposed to just putting up.
What are you seeing in terms of remote work, and is that affecting any of the developments you're working on or planning today?
Not at all. I think actually I think everyone's been a little bit more efficient, and everyone I talk to says, you know, everyone's more efficient working remote. And I think that, if anything, this might give us the time to rethink our infrastructure and how we work, you know, in driving into and the Mass Pike every day. You know, I used to work in Boston every day. My commute used to be 2 hours each way. I mean, that's not healthy, and that's not efficient. And to be able to do the same thing, you know, at my home, or a home office, or a small office nearby my home, and then just because with all the technology that we have these days, it's a no-brainer. But I think I'm hoping that, you know, we use this time to fix our infrastructure and realize that, you know, traveling to work 2 hours each way is not the way to do it. Or
yeah.
You
know, that's an interesting point. I think the question was also the object of the question. I think that was an interesting response. The object of the question was also around the design of the product, meaning like the shared common spaces and some of the units design. Is COVID, in terms of the working from home, working remotely, is it affecting the way you're thinking about the apartments and the common spaces?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you take Lincoln, for example, Oreo Landing, you know, we came up with the idea on Oreo Landing to do all, you know, a mixture of 1 and 2 bedrooms, but all of those 1 and 2 bedrooms have some options of pluses, right? Meaning that there's an extra room, there's an extra office. But it doesn't count as a bedroom. It's just bigger square footage and another room to put a desk in, and maybe put a, you know, a small door or something on, you know, for privacy. And we've been leasing Oreo Landing now, and people have been wanting those units much more than the ones without that home office. And then just having more land we're developing Oreo Landing on 6 acres. You know, we have courtyard space, vegetable gardens, a dog park. You know, we have a historic house that we're using as a potting shed and arts and crafts. I mean, you can't do that in very urban locations. You just don't have the room. So I think, you know, these type of amenities we're seeing them being very well received, because I think of the COVID situation that we're in, and people wanting more elbow room and space around them. So I think that's only going. So I think being very creative as an architect and developer is going to be very crucial in developing housing in the next, you know, 10, 15 years, I'm sure, in majorly in response to this. So.
Hey, Andrew, are you comfortable going to 7:05? We got started a little late. I don't want to shortchange.
Yep. Nope. Absolutely.
So just a question I had in terms of your work with some of the different public agencies and the different groups that you're working with now. How does that kind of fit into your vision in the long term, and how do those partnerships add value to the places that you're making? I'm kind of curious how you see that.
So just say that last part again. You cut out a little bit on me. Sorry.
How do you see the public groups that you're partnering with, whether it be on affordable housing or the mental health? How do you see some of those relationships adding value to the places you're creating over the long term?
So I think what we found out is when we partner with a town, a city, an affordable housing trust, or a nonprofit, you know, what they're looking for is a sense of trust, and that they know that you're going to finish the job and do a good job, and that they could put their name on it, and because they're representing someone else, right? They're representing a board, the public, and so on and so forth. So I think, to be able to, the value that they add is vetting out us. We're coming in and we're saying, okay, we're going to take a civic-minded approach to development and work with the community, try to do something that works for everyone. It's not going to work for everyone, but try to make a list of things that, the sensitive points, and work with the community on behalf of the public entity or the nonprofit. And the value that they can get from that is, they're vetting us out, right, for the public. And I think that only puts more trust in the public when you're getting to like a town meeting vote, or you're getting to a special permit process. You have a bunch of neighbors coming and saying, we like your project. We want your project because because the nonprofit or the planning board or the Affordable Housing Trust or whatever it is has vetted you out and is your partner, right? I think that's really key. It's almost a little bit corny, but it's building trust. And we're trying to build trust through every project that we do. So we don't want to, that's why, on every project that we do, we try as hard as we can to, fulfill the promises that we made, because it leads to another project, eventually.
Yeah.
So that's how we essentially build our pipeline. If we can do a successful project, we have a business development and strategy right there.
Yeah. And so just on that, actually, to that point, it's an interesting point that was made. There was Judy Barrett spoke with us in the discussion series a couple weeks back, and the discussion was on race and land use policy. But a big part of the conversation was around the challenge of developing in the suburbs, especially of Boston and Massachusetts, outside of Boston. And a lot of that was around, getting approvals for multifamily housing and density, right? And the conversation was, how do we change some of the policy? How do we change some of the zoning to be more beneficial for density, so that there can be some sense of social equity and justice created through more housing for a more diverse group of people? It was a very interesting conversation, but I only pointed out because it seems like part of your strategy of developing the suburbs is creating these types of partnerships that allow some of these projects to take, they enable them almost. Is that right?
Absolutely. I think town meeting vote so 2 of our projects went through a town meeting vote. Abbey Road, which was the first one, went to a town meeting vote, and, town meeting vote, you need majority obviously on, and it's very hard. Very rarely does anyone want anything built around them in the suburbs. It's just it's hard to change. And so, and then Lincoln also, Oreo Landing was a town meeting vote. And so what helped with those 2 town meeting votes, honestly, was, well, I'm going to bring up Oreo Landing because, John, you're involved in that, co-urbanize, right? We use co-urbanize on that project, and we were able to reach out to a lot of people that necessarily wouldn't come to a town meeting vote or the public process that we went through. And that allowed us to reach out to, families that had young kids that couldn't get out that night, right? And we went to the transfer station, which is like in Lincoln, the transfer station is like a public park in a way, because everyone goes there on Saturday and hangs out. So we decided that we were going to go there and set up tables at the transfer station, and we held workshops every week at the library. So I think in terms of the community engagement aspect of a developer, reaching out as much as possible, not being afraid, you're going to get beat up, right? But in the end, you're going to win over a lot of people by just putting yourself out there and speaking, just being very transparent. And so when it comes around to the town meeting vote, there's ways around it, although the town meeting vote is very hard to overcome. And I think municipalities are now doing things to get around sort of town meeting votes, like 40R or overlay districts and, whatever it is. But I think it's hard to develop in New England, because of that.
So maybe in closing, question regarding the CNU principles and charter and kind of how that's influenced your work and Civico's work, and how that, I'm curious to hear. I mean, I think at least from what I saw with our project in Lincoln, is using the principles of CNU helped to connect with some of the planners and some of that conversation in terms of the architects that were involved on the planning board. How do you see the principles in terms of influencing the project and the success of the project, some of these projects?
Absolutely. I mean, when we were in the planning board for Lincoln, for example, we essentially pulled up CNU, right, in the principles. And, Jennifer Burney, who is the chief planner in Lincoln, she got it right away. She knew what we were trying to do. And, she was on our side, every bit of the way, because she knew that our values came directly from the principles of CNU. And again, CNU, smart growth, and a lot of other type of organizations like that we all sort of utilize for kind of the principles, right? For, walkability, bring the cars around back. Don't have them in front in the courtyard. Don't make a bunch of surface parking lots. Use low impact development standards for your site work. Doing lead for homes. I mean, everything that is what I think we all understand, what is, maybe the people that aren't in this industry, or the people that are voting a town meeting vote, don't understand. We had a partner right there, because she got it and the town got it. So I think CNU was a major part of, actually it's a major part of all of our projects, because we're able to point to something, a large group of people that, believe in what we're doing. So it was kind of corny, but it's true.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, it's 7:05, Andrew. We want to thank you for your time. Thanks so much for your presentation.
Yeah. Sorry about the mishap at the beginning. I gotta figure out my technology. So
thanks, Matt. Thanks everyone for coming tonight, and we look forward to seeing you again when we have our next discussion series in August with Graffito. All right, thanks again, and have a great night.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
John. Bye.